Okay. Hello, everybody. We're back. We are back. I have a really good topic today, so I'm really excited to share it and get into different levels of consciousness within dimensions, which is something I was listening to a talk on, and they brought this up, and I said, wow, that's kind of something I want to talk about. I kind of like I hadn't really thought about it in that perspective, so I want to get into that. So we're going to see how we flow with that today. So, okay. I had to reset everything up last week. Yeah. Everything went haywire. So I had to take off and stream on Instagram instead. But now we're back. Okay. We have an assumption that when we shift a dimension, we have the same level of consciousness within that dimension. And I had that same kind of thought process. Whereas if I'm in the third dimensional consciousness, that's all kind of the same. And if I'm in the fourth dimensional consciousness, that's all the same. And when I'm in the fifth dimensional consciousness, it's all the same. And by saying it's all the same, I mean that we're not shifting within it, right? We're kind of the same, going through the same thing. Now, I was listening to Lisa Transcendence Brown, who does this amazing work. So if you have not checked out her work, I highly recommend it. And she always talks about 12th dimensional aspects. So that's one of the things she always talks about. And we've talked about it on here before. That you have 12th dimensional things you do. I know I talked about how I would do one thing, one dimension. I feel like I'm repeating it again in a different dimension because I have to go through it through a different level of consciousness to, like, I could be a supporter as a third dimensional consciousness, but then I have to learn to be a supporter from my higher aspect in an eighth dimensional consciousness, right? So you kind of go through a lot of the things again, but from a different consciousness level. One thing I never really thought about was that within each dimension, there's a different consciousness. So, and that makes it, and I know you're going to say, well, it's always so hard. You always talk about it being so hard, and it is only hard for our human ego, and I always try to preference that. It's very simple. You know, soul line realities are really simple, but they feel hard because we try to take everything in the beginning and make it linear. We try to take everything and make it human because we don't know another way to do it in the beginning. So with consciousness, it's kind of the same thing. Our body's consciousness is the last thing that comes up with us, right? So you can expand your consciousness to maybe an eighth dimensional template, but your body still might be setting in a sixth dimensional template. You're always going to be working within the three. Like your conscious might rest in one place as kind of a baseline, but your body still might be setting two degrees lower because it takes so much to clear the body physically, to reprogram, to rewrite templates. You know, I've said it before, pretty much every template rewrite I did was about 2.5 years. And I'm starting to equate that now with the dimensional jump. So if my body is setting in a fifth dimensional reality, my consciousness might be setting in a seventh dimensional reality. But the body has to get to the seventh dimensional reality before that reality comes in. So when we see a lot of stuff we want to do, and we know we're supposed to do certain things, those things can't come in until we get to a certain, our body to that consciousness level. The frequency of our body has to be there, and then we can be in that reality. So we talk about, that's when we anchor stuff in. You know, we can hit the consciousness all day long, but if we don't do anything to work toward that consciousness, our body can't rest in that consciousness, which is when the reality forms around us. So this is why it can be challenging. Even if people are in the same dimension, you still have a different level of consciousness. Because just because you might feel like you're partnering with a person and you're both setting in the fourth dimension, right? But for some reason, you don't anymore. You know, and maybe you came through together. Maybe you were both coming through the spirituality path together, and now you're sitting here and you're like, but I feel like we don't resonate anymore. But I don't feel like I'm in the fifth dimension yet. I don't feel like I've gone past where a big jump, but we don't resonate anymore. Because some person can be in the beginning of the fourth dimension and stay there for a long time, getting into just different levels of spirituality, maybe getting a little bit into tarot cards, maybe getting more into astrology. And those to me are kind of the gateways to kind of the fourth dimensional. You're going through your awakening. And then you get to where you're working through everything you need to work through within that dimension. You have to do everything from that dimension. And when you're doing that, that takes time. I will preference it again, 2.5 years, 2.5 years. I'm able to look at anything in less than 2.5 years. Sometimes a little bit longer than that to get to the next thing. And probably I could do it a little bit quicker, maybe shave a couple months off there. But what would happen to me is I'd start getting to the end of what I'm looking at now is kind of getting to the end of a dimension and not wanting to jump to the next one. Because you get comfortable in the one you're in. Even if you might not have loved that one in the beginning and you were sad to leave the other one, and then you got to this one, and then you're like, I don't know if I'm going to like it, I don't know if I, but then you're in it and you transform that because your consciousness is raised, you know how to transform that space, you know how to transform that reality. Because what I realized is every time I jumped dimensions, I had to move my body to a different place to live. Whether it was in the same area but in a different house, whether it's now, when I made my last jump, I had to move to a different area to clear up some other stuff I was going to be working on in this dimension. But every time I jumped dimensions, I had to jump from where I lived. I couldn't live in the same place and be in a different dimension. We can't keep our body in the same place as our human body was and say we're living a new earth reality, because that was our old earth reality, you know, and they're not the same. And that is the biggest misconception, that you can take the concepts and force them in to your human reality, and that we can't do it that way. We're never going to be able to do it that way. And that's why things have to start falling away from those old realities, because we don't get that. You know, we sit there and think, oh, I can make that shit work. I'll just jam it in here. Let me get my round peg and try to get in this square hole. And I don't know why the shit doesn't work anymore. And now the whole thing is starting to fall apart because I've been trying to cram it in for so long. It doesn't work anymore. You know, it doesn't work like that. And the more we kind of understand that, I'm like, oh, so it just doesn't work that way. It's not supposed to work that way. That's not how it is designed. Every dimension we rest our body in, when our body is the frequency of that dimension. Everything that's not that has to fall away. It really can't exist. Once our body leaves that dimension, that whole thing goes away. Now, do things come back in different iterations? Yes. Can things come back in different frequencies? Yes. Will your relationship change and expand and grow? Yes. You know, I had a child that I was really, really close to. I'm still really close to since he was born. And in the beginning, I was with him every day. You know, and then it moved to where I was with him maybe 2 or 3, 4 times a week. And then I was with him, you know, because children, they continue their journey and they get to school and all that. And now we're moving to a time where he's going to be here maybe 3 or 4 or 5 days a month. But it's changed. But he hasn't gone away, but the relationship has morphed. And the relationship has changed. And there's a lot of other things in that reality as to why it has to morph and change like that. It's not just a one size fits all. You know, like everything's got to go. Some things do go, and some things you won't see again. Other things are going to come back, but they come back in a different alignment. They kind of alignment is a funny thing. We can try to align it, and if we're not aligning it, we're either going to watch it align itself, or we're going to watch it fall away. You know, and the watching it fall away is the hard part for our human. That's the part we don't like. We want that to kind of stay. We don't want to have to let that go. And when we have to let that go, that is the scariest part to us, because we don't want to lose some of this stuff. If we're seeing it as a loss, we still need to grieve it. Because we're still seeing it as, oh, I'm losing something. I'm losing out on something. I don't want to lose that. I want to keep that stuff here. So when we talk about aligning reality, you're going to align it to the level of consciousness you're at that time. So if you're operating from a 4th dimensional level of consciousness, you're going to align your reality to that. Well, when you go into a 5th dimensional level of consciousness, now the shit's not aligned anymore. And that's confusing to us, because we're like, well, it was aligned. But it wasn't aligned to your current level of consciousness. And when you start to comprehend and really feel into the fact that you can shift your consciousness within the dimension you're in, because your body's consciousness is raising as your consciousness raises. So your consciousness is always going to be higher than the body consciousness, because it's so much clearing that has to be done with the DNA. So I might rest my body for 2 years, 2.5 years, in, let's say, a seventh dimensional consciousness, right? That's where my body, so that's the vibration of my body, is seventh dimension. My consciousness might get 15 dimensions, but my body is still setting in 7. And I know I talked about we're going to work within the 3. I'm going to say that the set point is going to be within the 3 for our consciousness. I might be able to hit 15, 20, 25, but perhaps my set point on a daily basis is 9th dimensional, but my body's setting in 7. And what I mean set point, I mean the 1 I might go back down to. Like we can expand up and then we're going to shrink back down. We're going to expand out and we're going to shrink back down to clear everything that's not part of the expansion we just had. And that's where people can drag the process out because they don't want to give up the stuff that's not that consciousness. Embodiment is different than awakening. We talk about the 2-strand DNA. We talked about, it'll take a year to do 1 strand of our DNA. 1 strand of our DNA is just the being in that consciousness, expanding your consciousness. And in the second year, you're going to be anchoring that consciousness in. You're going to be embodying that consciousness. So it means you're actually going to be doing things from that consciousness, whether it's putting out work from that consciousness, whether it's doing your everything you're doing before, but just from that consciousness. And what's not that consciousness will fall away. So what I find out, I'll be in a doing phase of one consciousness, embodying that in, but I'll be in the expansion phase of a different consciousness in the same time frame, right? And I'll be in the being phase of that consciousness. And then the next year comes and I'll be in the doing phase of that, and I'll start a being phase of something else. So it's never just a set thing, and it's never just a one thing you're going to be doing. But we can only align to the level of consciousness we're at. It doesn't mean it wasn't aligned before. Just like even when you're in your human ego, you're still aligning stuff to a consciousness. You're aligning it to a human consciousness. That's why it tends to not be working out, or it feels like it's shitty, because it's a consciousness you're aligning to, but it's not the highest consciousness. It's still a human consciousness. Everything that happens to us is aligned for something. It's just aligned to a human program you're going to work through. It's not aligned to a soul-aligned reality in a sense. It's aligned to something that's going to get you to a soul-aligned reality at some point. It's aligned to that level of consciousness. So if you have 12 levels of consciousness within each dimension, your body's going to work through. Like, your body's going to start going in at one level of consciousness, and when it's ready to exit out of that, it gets through all the levels of that consciousness, you're going to start to feel the disconnect. But you still feel like you're in the same, it still kind of feels like, why can't I get along with people in the 4th dimension or the 5th dimension or the 6th dimension? I should be able to get along with them. Like, we should resonate. We should be able to come together. We should be able to, and I find this is kind of the frustrating thing when you start to bring people in, and you want to bring people in, you want to work with people, you want to do more with certain people, and even though it feels like we should all be in a similar place, we're not. We're just not. And we also have different missions we're trying to do. And we're not at a place to come together yet. We might all be in the 9th dimension as far as our bodies go, but they're in one level, they're in maybe the end of it, and I'm at the beginning of it. And it doesn't match, So we have to have a very similar frequency, even within the dimension. And I think sometimes we kind of paint it as it's just 4th dimensional consciousness, but there's so many iterations in that. And you're going to find, even when we're just not talking about body consciousness, we're talking about just hitting that consciousness. There's iterations in that. But body consciousness and your higher consciousness, you're not going to be on the same page. Body consciousness is always going to be lower just because of what we have to clear from the body. And that's what we have to pull up with us. It's not just hitting the consciousness and saying, I did it. It's embodying it in. So every time I reach a different level of consciousness, my body would move. I would know, and now that's kind of my marker. I didn't even notice that before as my marker, and you're going to notice you're going to do that. You're going to go back and be able to see, I see now. My body had hit a different dimension, so now I have to move my body somewhere else. We can't anchor in higher dimensional reality setting in our old ones. And that is when people hear that. There's a couple things people don't like to hear. That's one of them. The financial rebuild is another one a lot of people don't like to hear about, because you can't take the money with you from dimension to dimension either. Even the iterations, the different frequencies within the dimension, you can't take the money with you, you know, because it's kind of an old frequency. It's in fact, it's still kind of tainted. When you go from fourth dimensional to fifth dimensional, you can't take the money with you. You really don't take a lot of stuff with you, but the money, you have to figure out another way to start bringing money in, a higher aligned way to your current level of consciousness. It's always going to be to your current level of consciousness. It's not going to be something else. You know, it's not going to be to the old. We can't go back to the old. You're going to find when you try to go back to the old, your body is going to 100% reject that. It's not going to allow you to go back to the old. It's not going to say that's okay, because that's not okay for us anymore. So when we're talking about different consciousness levels, look at where you are within that. You know, look at what have I done in this dimension. And you're also going to notice when you start hitting different frequencies within that dimension, you start to change you start to change your surroundings a little bit. You know, if you have a room of clutter, all of a sudden that can't stay anymore. That whole clutter has got to go. I'm going to redo this room. I'm going to do a deeper clean. You know, before I had a pretty good clean, but now everything feels a little dirty. Now I got to go a deeper clean. I got to steam my floors. I can't mop them anymore. I got to get all my carpets done. I got to get all my carpets done again. You're going to find you're going to go into a different level of making sure everything's cleaner, because now your body frequency is higher and that won't support it anymore. So now you got to rearrange everything. For a while, when you're still within that, working within the bandwidths of that dimension, you can just kind of rearrange rearrange the chairs in the Titanic a little bit, just because eventually that dimension will sink and you're going to be in a new one, right? So, or it's just going to dissolve. So you're kind of rearranging things, knowing that eventually it's going to dissolve away. You know, this is not, you know, God, I can't remember the saying. Oh, God, I can't remember how it went. It was an old, it was a show I used to watch. He would say, it had a way to say it. It was really funny, but it's like, is it now time, or is it just almost time? You know, and that's kind of what you have to start really going inside and saying, you know, is it time now, or is it going to be in 6 months from now? Can I just keep this? Can I rearrange a little bit? Can I get rid of some furniture? Can I clean out this room? Can I redo maybe my bedding a little bit? Can I get some new furniture? Can I just get rid of furniture? A lot of it's just getting rid of stuff, you know, getting rid of it. Cleaning stuff out and helping to declutter will help a lot. You know, I am very minimalistic on stuff. The last dimension I left everything behind, because it's like, I don't want any of the stuff. I'll get everything new when I get to the new place. I don't want anything else, you know, or even if I don't get it new, if I can utilize what's there, I'll utilize what's there, and then I'll decide, what do I need? But sometimes we don't know till we get there. You know, we don't know how the space is going to feel. We don't know how we're going to feel in the space. So we have to kind of wait and see. But for a while, you can buy your time. You can make the space work. And I'm going to focus more on the space, because, and you can even do it with jobs too. You're going to see that every 2.5 years, something's shifting. You know, whether it's like, and I can go back into my awakening days, even pre-awakening, and every 2.5 years, my job changed. 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 The only time it did not was when I sat somewhere for about 5 years, but I was also just recently married, and this was back like 20 some years ago, and I was focused on that relationship. So I was still living my template out, right? And people who are still living out those human templates, it's going to take them longer to complete certain phases. If they have children, it's going to take them longer, because they have to meet that agreement of raising those children and getting those children to a certain place. So it's going to take longer when your consciousness is kind of got other things going on and not just 100% linear focus on ascension. So I could go back and even see then, that was about 5 years. I was kind of at that job, and then I would move. But then after my marriage dissolved, it was kind of after that, it was like every couple of years, change again. About every 2.5 years, change again. Every 2.5 years, change again. Because I had to now go to the next thing. And so even within third dimensional consciousness, beginning of fourth dimensional consciousness, you could start to see your body shifting and your body changing, and that's not aligned anymore. Now, back in those consciousness levels, I didn't realize what I was doing. My universe is doing it for me. You know, that job's going to end. You're going to get a new one. This was going to be done. You're going to go do this now. And you just kind of say, okay, these are just opportunities in life. You know, it's no more than that at that point for us, because we don't see the bigger picture. We just see life going on. You know, I'm going to move here, and now I'm going to go sit here for a while, and then I'm going to go move over here, and I'm going to be here for a while. And even when you have your awakening, from my awakening to when my body, not my consciousness, but my body was actually anchored in the fifth dimension, it was about 7 years. And I also had to work through a lot of human timelines I created. I had to button up a lot of that stuff. I had to still fulfill some things within my human template and to work through all those distortions and start aligning a lot of that stuff. And basically just letting all of it go, honestly. I mean, I could sit here and say a lot of it I could align and kind of reshape a little bit. And a few things did, you know. The child did. The child stayed along the way with me. But that relationship's gone into different iterations as he has expanded and grown. It's different. But I can also see that coming years before, that we're going to go into this phase, and then I'm going to be in this phase. Or maybe it'll eventually be just, I'll just see him during the summer. He'll come spend the summers with me. And that'll be what we'll do for a couple of years. And then it'll shift to something else. It's always going to be shifting and changing. But within the dimension, too. So if we're just waiting and thinking, well, something shifted, I just jumped a dimension. Unless you see a radical change, to me, a really radical change of what's going on, I'm still within the dimension. I just shifted a consciousness up again. You know, and we're talking about body consciousness. When we're talking about where our body sits, we're talking about body consciousness. Things supporting the body. So sometimes it's good to separate out body consciousness and our I'm going to say higher conscious, just the amount of conscious you can reach, but you haven't embodied it yet, right? Two different processes. So I might have a base consciousness that sets at the 9th, 10th dimension, but my body still may be setting in 7. You know, 7 or 8 at this point. But when I'm going to uptick to 9 or 10, then where I live is going to change. But that can take 2.5 years to rewrite the body. But you have to hold that consciousness to pull the body up to the next one. So if you're just in a phase where this is now changing, or now this has got to move, what I will say is, when I was in my pre-awakening, or my pre-awakening, awakening up to when I feel I was completely in the fifth dimension, my body was there, I was moving on, up and on and out. It went faster after that. But the space I was in supported me, third dimensional, fourth dimensional. I was in that last phase for like 10 years because my body didn't uptick as quick, right? My consciousness was going pretty quick, but I had so much in the body to clear. You know, I had so much in the body that had to clear to get my body vibration up. I had to get on a lot of more cleaner stuff, right? Cleaner food, cleaner water, activate my light body, activate my soul body. That took a lot of time to even bring my body up to where my consciousness might have been in the 7th dimension, but my body was now in the 5th. And I can now move my body I had to move my body now to a different place, because this place I was in, I can't do much with it. And I also noticed, like the last year and a half I was in that space I was in for 10 years, that covered so much of my process, that I did start toward the end tinkering with it. You know, repainting here, changing this, because the vibration was off, and I started to feel it was off because I was getting kind of into the upper epsilon where I had to start rearranging things. Now, since then, it's been a lot quicker. I don't stay for as long in places, maybe 2.5 years. The last place I was in 2.5 years. I feel like this one will probably be about that, 2 years, 2.5 years, and then I'll go somewhere else. Now, eventually, we will get to the place we will stay, because our body will hit the vibration where that's as far as the body, in a sense, will be able to go, and that place can support all that. But that might be a few more jumps for me down the road. And sometimes we'll talk about quantum jumping, and We can quantum jump within a dimension too. It doesn't have to be I'm going to jump from the 5th to the 10th or the 5th to the 6th. I might be jumping from the bottom of the 5th to the middle of the top of the 5th. But that might have been an 8-month period that now I got to do in 2 or 3 weeks. I've got to get all that stuff done I had to do before. I'm noticing a lot more quantum jumping. Now, will this take 2.5 years? I don't know. Will this dimension I'm in now, my body sets in, maybe take 2? Possible. It's all very possible. We just don't know. I've never seen it less than that. So my guess is it's going to be 2 to 2.5 years because I've just never seen it less than that. And I can see where I kind of hold on a little bit in the end. Because it's funny that even if you weren't super excited about the jump you did, when your body got there and you realize, oh yeah, I can see why this is supporting why I have to be here, the different things I'm working through. Like this year is big for me on Unity Consciousness. That was a big thing I did this year, being able to coexist with other people in a different consciousness level, but still be able to do what I need for me. And then next year I'm starting to see, okay, this is what you're going to be working on next year. You're going to be creating experiences for people, doing more, workshops, retreats, that type of thing. I'm going to be doing different types of experiences for people next year, right? So you can start to see that and really immerse yourself in what's coming next. And I think we've talked about it, plus we have the Lionsgate in a few days. It's 8/8, it's the Lionsgate. So a lot of us will start getting that. We were clearing out what we had to clear out, and now we're going to start getting in the stuff that we have to, we have to do. Like sometimes you might feel in the space you're in, hey, I've got to clean this room out. I don't know why yet. Somebody's coming to stay there. They might not come for another 6 months, but I got to get this cleaned out now. Because by the time they might just show up, and you need to have a place for them. But if we put that off, we keep our body stuck in an old reality. We're not letting it get higher. We're keeping it stuck. We know we have to do stuff with our surroundings. We know we have to do these things. When we procrastinate, we're delaying it. We are always the delay across space and time. We're always going to be the delay. So the longer we are the delay, the longer we are delaying our new realities to come in. So if you feel like you're supposed to do something, we do it, I feel like we're supposed to clean out a room. We do it. We set the room up. We don't even know who's coming yet. We don't even know who's going to be here yet. We're just getting the room here. We're getting the room ready because someone's coming. It might be a lot of different someones. It might not be the same someone. It might be a lot of different people coming. You just know someone's coming. So really start to hone in on that stuff. When you get those passing fleets of, oh, I got to clean this now, or, oh, this isn't. People think, oh, unless you're setting, it's different than the human concept of what work is, right? If you're not putting out a product, it's not work. When you're working on your vibration, when you're clearing out your space, when you're upping your vibration, that's work, okay? When you're sleeping and anchoring in another reality, that's work. In the higher dimensional realms, we're doing work, okay? So when I spend the day cleaning the house because I'm now entering into a different phase, I've got to go to a deeper cleaning phase now because I'm entering into a different part of my process here, a different dimension within my dimension in a sense. I have to be ready for the next thing to come in, and then also see, okay, in a couple years, because I'm almost 1 year into this one, so I'm going to be curious to see if it goes quicker this time. But like I said, 2 years kind of minimum. Could I shorten the 2 to 2.5? Possibly. That's kind of what I'll be curious to see. If possibly I can do that, but everything's kind of a minimum. Like I said, 2 to 2.5. If you think you're going to do it quicker than that, it's too much body process that has to happen, and we're just not able to do that. So, all right, I am going to check my chat. I'm a little late on that. Let me see. Okay, I think that's it. I don't think I have anything really I need to talk about. Okay. All right. So the most important thing to remember is it's not linear, and it's not set, and it's not just one thing. It's never going to be just one thing. It's always going to be a zillion things you're supposed to be doing. It's always going to be a consciousness kind of within a consciousness within a dimension. Everyone's not in the same place. And I know I've done a lot of videos about, hey, I'm not in the same place, not in the same place, not in the same place. don't be discouraged when people aren't in the same place. Don't be discouraged when you thought you were in one place and you turn around the next day and all of a sudden you're not in that place anymore. All of a sudden you got to be somewhere else now. All of a sudden it doesn't work anymore. Because it's not always going to go the way we think it's. Well, it's never going to go the way you think it's going to go. I'll promise you that one. It's not going to go the way you think it's going to go. It's always going to go the highest aligned way for it to go, but that's not the way our human would think it would go. And once we kind of can release how we think it should go and go toward what we think it's supposed to be, and really expand into what it could be. You know, start embracing the subtlety of the shifts. And not feel the burden of the shift. You know, like, oh, now I got to clean everything again. Get excited about that. You know, once I could start to correlate it to where, okay, every dimension, when my body hits a different dimensional frequency, I have to move my body. You know? So it also gets you to get excited to where you are because you know it's fleeting. You know, we don't get into that humdrum human mentality that nothing ever changes, everything is always changing. Every day is different. Every day is a different consciousness technically, and it's never going to be the same thing twice. It's always going to be in a different place. It's always going to be doing something else. It's never going to be the same. And as long as we realize it's never going to be the same, we start to really cherish the moment. We create the experiences for people. We create an experience for ourselves, and to be like, okay, well, this is not going to last forever. You know, this will be done, and we'll be on to something else. And it's funny, the reality is we didn't want to enter into, because of our human consciousness, didn't want to go there, didn't want to deal with our stuff, didn't want to have to go into a place and deal with our stuff, maybe didn't have to want to move to a small town, maybe wanted to stay in the big city because that felt more exciting to our human. But once we got here, we're like, it's kind of peaceful here. You know, I can do more work here. I can be more in tune here than I could before. And I couldn't do that anywhere else I went. So, because you will find you will start moving out of the cities. I mean, you saw that a little bit going on in COVID where people started doing an exodus of the cities because it was too much for them. So now you're going to start to feel the same thing, you know, where I noticed I was in a condo around a lot of people. Then I had to move within the same area because I still had some sole contracts in that area to fulfill, but I was in an area now where it's a little looser, not as many people around, but I was still kind of in a congested area. Then I moved more to a rural area because you realize how much space you need. You know, you realize how much space you have to have, and how much alone time you need to really do this process and do this process as efficiently, as quickly as possible. Because we get into a phase where we do want to do as quickly as possible, but then we kind of will start to flip on that and say, okay, let me just enjoy where I am, because it took me a long time to get here. You know, it took me years and years and years and years to get here. So I need to get into these spaces and get into these places and really enjoy that experience. You know, look at the subtlety in it. You know, enjoy the subtlety in it. Enjoy all of the magic and creation that you see. You know, don't try to get to the next one. And I was always trying to get to the next one, but after a while you start to really embrace, wow, I wish I'd enjoyed that when I was there. Because usually for a while they get a little bit more challenging because they cause us to work through more of our stuff, right? So when we have a job completely supporting us, let me enjoy that. Because then I'll go through a part where I won't have that. I'm going to have to find support from a different area. Because different dimensions, you can't be supported from third dimensional consciousness things. You know, you can't be supported from a third dimensional consciousness job. And I'm going to say that in a sense to where the company itself is not aligned with you anymore. You can take any job you have and bring your highest aspect to it. But after a while, you're going to see that you can't support that anymore. You can't support that company anymore. You can't support that consciousness anymore. You can't support that system anymore. It's not that you can't show up at your highest. It's just after a while, it's kind of the same thing as in, you know, cleaning out and shifting cleaning out your space, repainting your space, redecorating your space, decluttering your space. You've done as much as you can do there. And now you just can't progress anymore still there, because the vibration of the space you work in no matter what you have tried to do, and after a while you can work with it for a while, but then it's like, I can't work with this anymore. Now I got to move on to the next thing. I cannot work with this anymore. So be aware when you hit that. But be aware of the flip of that, where you maybe just don't want to deal with the shit that's there and you want to run from it and go somewhere else. So you really have to go deep on that and go, can I walk away from whatever it is? Fully resolved, fully at peace, fully standing in the power of what I got to stand in. Because I found the last reality I closed out, there's a couple things I didn't want to have to say. A couple things I didn't want to have to confront. So I was kind of able to dodge it for a while, but on the last day I was in that space, I had to talk to the landlord about certain things that I had kind of not said, but my universe would not let me leave that reality till I could close that out. Until I could say some of the stuff that happened in this space, it's not acceptable. Some of the treatment is not acceptable. The way the place was upkept is not acceptable. And I had to do that, even though I was trying not to do that till the last minute. And then I was like, okay, I've got to say it, because if not, I can't go on. I can't say I'm ready to move on to the next thing. So there might be sometimes where we're kind of in a place for a while because we can't say what we need to say. We're not ready to say it. Until we're ready to say it, we energetically can't close it out. So we stay stuck, in a sense, in that old dimension. Our body stays stuck there because we have something in us that hasn't cleared to be able to say it, clear it, move on to the next dimension. So we'll kind of, I'm going to say stuck just because we're sticking ourselves there. Because we don't want to face it. But when your universe keeps showing you got to face it, eventually we will buck up and do it. Or your universe is just going to put it in your face, which is what it did to me on the last day I was in that space. The last day, it just put it right in my face. And I had to. I had to stand up for myself and say what I needed to say. From respectful and our highest place. The highest consciousness you can get to in that moment. Is it the highest of the high? Maybe it wasn't in that moment. That's how we learn. That's how we learn what is the highest of the high. What can we do? So, okay. I think that's a good stop for today. So I will see everyone next time.